Hey there, this is Tulsa criminal defense attorney Stephen Cale. I'm going to talk to you about 7 reasons that you may want to consider taking a plea deal. Now, in another one of my videos and my articles on my website, I talk about the basics of plea deals or plea bargaining. Take a look at that. That kind of gives you a general overview. So got some good information in there. But here are 7 reasons why you may want to consider a plea deal. Now, just briefly, let's talk about what is a plea deal. Well, basically, it's an agreement between the defendant and the prosecution to resolve the charge, resolve the case. Now, there's hundreds and hundreds of charges filed every day across America, but only about 3% of those actually go to trial. And so with the rest of the 97%, some of the charges get dismissed either by the prosecution on their own. Some charges are dismissed by filing pre-trial motions by a defense attorney. I like doing that. I like getting charges dismissed. It's a lot of fun and it's good for the client. But sometimes you have to get the case resolved through a plea negotiation and a plea deal. Well, why would you want to do that? Well, here's 7 reasons why you may want to do that. For one, now if somebody's in jail, it's a very high bond. Friends and family can't, gather the money for such a high bond. A plea bargain will get you out of jail. Whether you plead, guilty or no contest, and there's some kind of probation, assuming there's probation, you'll get out of jail because that case will be resolved, and you'll be set free. You'll be on probation. There'll be some terms of the probation. But get you out of jail, and you want to get out of jail as soon as possible. Jail is just not a good place to be for anybody. Now, another thing is financial savings. If you resolve a case early on, then you're not going to have to go to trial. Trials are very expensive, depending on the nature of the charge and whether or not it's a felony or misdemeanor. But you can save a lot of money by not going to trial. Now, I wouldn't want you to take a plea just because of your financial situation. If you truly are innocent and you want to fight the charge, that's okay. But it's going to cost you some money. And it's up to the client whether or not to accept a plea deal. That's totally up to the client. The client will know what's in his or her best interest after receiving some good legal counsel and being able to think about it, but you can save some money by accepting a plea deal if that plea deal is right for you and it's acceptable to you. Another thing is you might be able to get a lesser sentence. Now, let's just say that the evidence is really stacked against you and there's a pretty severe penalty. Well, with some plea negotiation, you might be able to get a lesser sentence than what the charge calls for. So for example's sake, if the maximum penalty is 10 years, the evidence is pretty strong against you, you don't want to take it to trial because you don't want to risk being sentenced to the maximum of 10 years. This is just an example. And through plea negotiation, the prosecution has agreed that you'll go 3 years into prison and have the remaining 7 years on probation, just for example's sake. Well, 3 years in prison, although bad, is a heck of a lot better than being in prison for 10 years. So again, that depends on the facts of the case, your circumstances, but that's just another reason why you might want to accept a plea deal for a lesser sentence. Another reason is probation. Sometimes there'll be an offer for probation. Now, unless I want to take a case to jury trial, and again, it's totally up to the client whether or not to accept a plea deal. But if the evidence is stacked heavily against them, they don't have a lot of money to fight the charge or go to trial, I always try to get probation for my clients, and that can either be through a deferred sentence or a suspended sentence. Both of them are probation. There's a difference between a deferred sentence and a suspended sentence. Take a look at my other article about the basics or understanding probation to learn about the differences between those. But you may want to accept a plea deal to be on probation. If you're on probation, you're not in jail or prison, and that's a really good thing for you. So you may want to accept a plea deal to be on probation. Now, just touching a little bit about a deferred sentence, it's probation, but at the end of the probation, the charge gets dismissed and the charge is expunged, which means sealed. So that's another good reason why you may want to take a plea deal, is because at the end of the probation, if it's a deferred sentence, the case will be dismissed and the case expunged, assuming that you've met all the conditions during the term of your probation. You haven't violated any of the terms of your probation. Another thing is, less social stigma. You may not care about what other people think about you, but if you can get a good plea deal, something that's right for you, and you're not going to have to go through a jury trial, you're going to reduce the exposure of media coverage if it's one of those kinds of cases, or if you can get a case reduced. Let's just say, for example, it gets reduced to some kind of assault and battery versus sexual battery. Well, that would be a heck of a lot better. There's all kinds of consequences for sexual battery. And so that's going to reduce the social stigma because you wouldn't, in that example, have a sex crimes case against you. It would be just assault and battery, which is bad enough probably for you, but not like sexual battery. So there's some instances in which the social stigma can be reduced. So that's one reason that you might want to accept a plea bargain. And lastly is, oftentimes through plea bargain, you can get the charge and or the sentence reduced. So again, using that example I just used, sexual battery, a reduced charge would just be battery. And certainly the sentence would be reduced on something like that. So there's all kinds of good reasons that you may want to accept a plea deal. I went through 7 of them that I could think of. You might be able to think of more. But before I end this video, I want to just tell you, here's my policy, the policy of Cale Law Office before accepting a plea deal. And again, whether you accept a plea deal is totally up to you. I don't get to decide that on my own. It's my client's decision. But I won't, unless the client wants to. I do discovery first. I file a discovery motion, and that forces the prosecution to turn over evidence that it has in the case, whether it's bad evidence against my client, and they even have to turn over favorable evidence that would tend to show that the person is not guilty or can mitigate or lessen the sentence. I file those motions right offhand, and I like to look at what the prosecution turns over as a result of my discovery request. That's something they have to do by law. It kind of allows me to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of the prosecution's case. Plus, I think it helps better inform my clients and help them make an informed decision on whether or not they want to accept a plea deal or not. So I hope this video has been informational and educational for you. For more details, take a look at my website. I talk about both these issues, the basics of plea bargaining, as well as those 7 reasons that I talked about. If you or somebody you know have been charged with a crime, give me a call. I'm Tulsa Criminal Defense Attorney Stephen Cale. Give me a call at 918-277-4800. That's 918-277-4800. Or take a look at my webpage at CaleLawOffice.com. That's CALE lawoffice.com. I have a lot of great information in there. There's some ways that you can contact me through my website. So I hope you've enjoyed this video.